Now you will experience the full power of the dark side.
This is Tatooine Sons, the only fan podcast to name a canon Star Wars creature and to be endorsed by the writer, director of The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson.
He's a cool dude.
He is cool. I was talking with Damon Wolf, who used to be the CMO of Lionsgate, and he helped lead the marketing campaign for Knives Out.
Oh, cool.
We were talking a little bit about Ryan today, and it was
cool.
He's the real deal. I mean, like, we knew that Ryan was a nice guy, but people that are in the industry, the more and more I talk to them that know Ryan, say he's like legitimately who you think he is.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
People be nice to him.
That's right.
Gosh.
So we're back with our second in our 8-episode series for Kingdom Come.
Yes. We are.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. So this will be the one where we talk about sand, and we'll do that after this message from the guys over there at the Reverend and the Reprobate. This is Tatooine Sons.
We are the Reverend and the Reprobate, just two best buds interviewing people we have no business talking to. I'm Lucas Pinkard.
I'm Dan Gibson. These aren't tears on my face.
Every Thursday, we interview somebody else from our favorite fandoms and yours. You can check those interviews out on the Christian Nerd HQ Network. You can find us on YouTube at RevRep Podcast at ReverendRep.com. And if you can't remember our name, just go to BaconOffice.com. It's way easier to find. New episodes every Thursday. Thank you guys for supporting Christian Nerd HQ, and check out the Reverend and the Reprobate.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody was lit.
Think about Pastor Drew at church a couple weeks ago throwing in the sand dialogue from Anakin in the middle of his sermon. Just for us. He didn't say I was quoting. He was quoting anything from Star Wars. He just was literally talking about sand and
stared
how,
at us.
and he stared at us and said, "It's what is it? The
It's
line
coarse, rough, and irritating, and
gets everywhere." And then just
wove.
He
well.
intentionally wove it in there, looked at us, and continued on with
You could tell he was so proud of it too.
It was
he
good.
was waiting for that moment. The
It was
entire
well done.
sermon. It was great.
It was good.
I was pretty proud of him.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's about all I got. No, I'm kidding.
Well, welcome to Tatooine Sons. We believe pop culture. That's it. We're Tatooine Sons, right?
I'm pretty sure. I think it's been that way for the past few years.
I'm discombobulated. We're Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. That's what I was trying to get at. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story, it is written on our souls, and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why we are in the midst of a 8-episode mini limited series. We'll call it that. We'll call it a limited series.
That's good. Yeah, I like that.
On
like 3 episodes. No.
No, they can be up to 8.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah,
it's like the Marvel shows.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
On DC's Kingdom Come, almost 30 years after it was written. So.
Still is able to be talked about. Still is relevant today.
Still relevant. Like last week, there was like controversy about DC's Kingdom Come, wasn't there?
Yes, because they were going to make an animated movie based off of Kingdom Come, but the regimes were changing, from
Warner Brothers,
from old school DC to James Gunn DC. So they had to cancel it because they weren't sure how it would work being transferred over. And so I hope they revive it though under this new regime. James Gunn probably canceled it because he's like, I wanted to do this in live action.
That'd be cool.
Animated.
That would be sick.
Maybe an Elseworlds story.
No, maybe main story, because
that
this
would be
first
intense.
phase is first chapters of Gods and Monsters, which would really fit into the kind of idea of this story.
That's it. Well, before we get into DC's Kingdom Come, I think that there's something else that we need to do.
Yes.
We need to wish BB Nate
a
happy 18th birthday.
Happy birthday!
If you're listening to this on day of release, it is literally he just turned 18 today.
He can vote.
True.
He's
I can be drafted.
He can be drafted. You have to fill out your draft card, whatever that thing is.
You can buy guns, just not handguns.
All right.
None of these things I really care about. Not much is going to change.
Do you feel older?
No.
Do you think you'll feel older tomorrow morning when you wake up since we're recording it the night before?
No. Don't think much will be different.
It is a wild thing for me.
I bet.
To think that my youngest is now 18 years old. And I bet you for a lot of you that listen to this podcast and have been listening to it since the beginning, there's a few of you that I know can still listen to this. I'm like, BB Nate has grown up before your ears.
Yeah, that is very true.
Nate, do you have your phone with you?
I don't. No.
I'm gonna call.
Oh God!
On speaker right now.
Thankfully, my phone's on silent, so Mom won't be like, "What is going on?"
I'm gonna call Nate.
I still haven't.
You're gonna hear his voicemail from when?
From the beginning of the podcast. I recorded this quickly after the podcast. It's gonna ring for a little bit.
It's gonna ring 4 times,
and I haven't changed it because I don't have a desire to change it. I don't know what I'm gonna say.
I can't wait for this. This is BB Nate. When we started the podcast, he recorded this. I don't remember why you recorded this voicemail.
Because I just needed a voicemail because I just got a phone. So
Nathan Jesse, sorry I missed your call. Please leave your name and number. I'll try to return your call as soon as possible. Have a great day. At the tone, record your message.
That's it.
When you have finished,
I know, but I'm going to say happy birthday to him. So
I'll just delete the message.
Happy birthday, BB Nate. I love you. I miss that little boyish voice, but I love the man that you've become. So happy birthday. All right.
Dang it, I can't delete it now. It's too sentimental.
It is good. See, I made it good.
No,
he's going to delete it anyway.
It was so weird. Like a couple weeks ago, I had somebody asking about the podcast because they hadn't heard about it before. And I pulled it up, and for some reason, it started playing the first episode by itself. And I heard the voice. I'm like, I need to get this off. This is weird.
You should go back if you haven't listened to the early episodes. First of all, they're a train wreck, so they're worth listening to.
The first episode's horrible.
But then at the same time, it's fun to listen to Nate. So I've got a new podcast that's a totally new podcast that's releasing today. Well, not today, but like the day that the people are listening. The movie marketing podcast.
You started a new one?
Yeah. So I'm using it to build some connections with some people in that space for Admazing. It's been great. We've been having some great conversations.
Is Barbie your first topic?
It's the title of it. I'll link in the notes here. You guys can check it out. It is the Geniuses Behind the Smile movie.
That campaign was
Talk
really good.
Barbenheimer.
Okay, fair enough.
That's a good first episode.
It's a good first episode.
I like it. I like
These
it.
are good. So check it out. It'll be a lot of fun. You guys ready to talk?
Search engine optimization with the Barbenheimer.
You know how it goes. I know a lot more about podcasts launching this first episode than I did 5.5 years ago.
That's very true.
Yeah.
On the other one. So
and you remembered a mic.
I did. I did. Oh my gosh, we'll have to recap that someday. All right, let's talk a little bit more about DC's Kingdom Come. This week we're talking about the narrative. So we're walking through the story, a little bit about the characters and their character arcs, not as much in the details on that, but a little bit about them. To kick things off, let's kind of walk through, briefly summarize what happens in Kingdom Come. How would you guys describe maybe the main plot to someone who hasn't read it yet?
Yeah, it's kind of set in a future where traditional heroes like Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman have retired, and then this new kind of more brutal generation of superhumans, metahumans, have taken their place, leading to just widespread chaos and destruction. Just like you're walking down the street and there's a war happening above you, basically. This culminates in a pretty catastrophic event in Kansas. I think it was a nuclear explosion. Which prompts Magog, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which prompts Superman to come out of his self-imposed exile, his bearish
fortress of solitude
to Star Wars, and attempt to restore order to the superhuman world. So, yeah,
it's
I mean, that's part.
Sad.
It is an interesting way to open up the story because you've got this major event that causes, like you said, it's like a bearish vow in Star Wars. It's like Luke going to exile on Ahch-To because he's failed with Kylo Ren. With it, it's it's hard to see when our heroes are being portrayed as broken and disconnected from who we thought that they were. What are your thoughts on starting off the story from that perspective?
It helps us kind of learn that our heroes, these heroes, and when this comic came out, people were still under the idea that these old superheroes were campy, cheesy, they had a couple good moments of darkness in them, but they faded away and they got cheesy and campy again. But the cool superheroes are the dark ones: Punisher, Cable, those people. I relate to them because they don't have powers and they're angry at the world, and I relate to that. And this comic, when it opens up, it shows that these heroes are still as human and relatable as these other dark superheroes are. We can relate to them sometimes even more because they show us that there's hope consistently throughout these points, which the other superheroes, it's just always they're angry at everything and have to get revenge.
Right.
So this shows that they're the Superman, literally the Superman, this perfect idea of a superhero, has this emotional compass that gets broken because he loses Lois, and it breaks him, which is something we hadn't really seen much before in comics. Not even really with Death of Superman. He just dies, and then we see everybody else reeling from that, but we don't see Superman's reaction to anything, and so that didn't really happen a lot in Superman comics. And
but before he kind of comes into the story is what you talked about, Sam, is the opening, right? It's
basically
it's like just the very beginning of this.
First
before we
issue.
get to the end where there is this hopeful ending, there's a lot that happens in between.
Definitely.
Talk a little bit, Nate, about kind of where Superman goes with the story in that.
Yeah, Superman's return, his kind of authoritarian approach led to kind of a division between the superhuman community, because the new superheroes thought that since they were so powerful that they should be able to do whatever they wanted because these humans can't stop them and they need protecting. But the way that these new superhumans were protecting them were kind of just ruling over them, not protecting them, and then fighting amongst themselves and eventually leading to more casualties among these heroes. And so with Batman forming his own faction, he kind of resists Superman's control because Batman's slightly worried about what Superman could do with all
He's
this.
always
all
kind
this
of worried
power.
about that.
And he's always worried about this. But Batman handles it pretty well in this. He's pretty chill about it compared to other times.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about him in this episode and then go into detail next week.
But simultaneously, Captain Marvel, he was still Captain Marvel at this point.
Yeah, the lawsuit had not been resolved yet.
It hadn't been resolved yet, so he was still Captain Marvel, which honestly I like it better than Shazam.
I do
He
too.
should have kept it better. Marvel sucks. Sometimes Marvel frustrates
That's just the DC fan and Nathan coming out.
Yeah,
there,
that was frustrating. But Captain Marvel became a pawn in Lex Luthor's kind of game against superheroes, all superheroes. And Batman eventually led to double cross him.
Because we thought he was working with Lex.
And he wasn't. And he was trying to just kind of make sure that everybody, again, being the one person that kept his morals and kept his level head in this series was Batman. And so it led to this giant climactic three-way battle at the Gulag, a prison for non-compliant metahumans. Basically, it was a giant building for reforming these superheroes into what Superman thought being a superhero should be, which that's not the way to tell them how to be a superhero. They have to figure it out for themselves, not told how to do it, because Superman didn't have superheroes telling him, you got to do this, you got to do this. He had to figure it out for himself.
He had parents.
He had John and Martha Kent.
Martha. Why did you say that name?
Yeah, exactly. But it kind of the division was a big part of this between the new generation and the old generation. And the why I think Batman was so open to seeing this kind of middle ground was because of the Bat family that he had at this point. He had Nightwing, he had Dick Grayson, Barbara.
Isn't Red Robin in this one?
He is. That's Tim Drake.
Yeah.
So he had Tim Drake in there as well, and so
is the Gulag is the metahuman prison in Flash patterned after this idea for the Gulag? in Kingdom Come? Does that exist in the Flash and other stories?
I'm sure it does.
Really?
I'm pretty sure it does. I don't remember right now off the top of my head. It sounds familiar, but I don't remember right now.
You're supposed to know it.
I know. I don't read Flash comics all that often.
Yeah. So I guess the story sort of reaches its conclusion though when they realize. Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman are the Trinity and that group realize that it's time to kind of step back and take a look at what they're trying to do instead of trying to impose order and control over the metahumans, the next generation, and all of Earth. Trying to do that, they realized that they had to kind of work alongside humanity in order to resolve the challenges and the problems rather than impose authority over them. So at that point, it becomes kind of that happy ending,
hopeful
that you're looking for on a story like this. So
it's not all great because they nuke most of the superheroes.
Yeah. A lot of the superheroes die, even though you've got Captain Marvel sacrificing himself in order.
It would have destroyed all of them had he not done something about it.
Let's talk a little bit about the character journeys. A little bit more detailed and kind of watching what they go through on this. We've talked a little bit about this already, but Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, let's focus in on them specifically. How do you think that these characters kind of evolve throughout this story, this narrative? What does their storyline, their arc say about the nature of heroism?
Yeah. I'll talk about Superman because Nathan,
You're going to let Nathan talk about Batman on his birthday?
I think I'll let him talk about Batman. We kind of talked about this, but he starts life, or he starts not life, but this story is a withdrawn figure, very similar to Luke Skywalker.
Logan, any of those
those characters. Grizzled old heroes. But eventually he comes back trying to impose a pretty authoritarian rule over the superheroes because that's what he thinks needs to be done. It's a firm hand approach, with things. And eventually he evolves through the story, realizing that heroism and this strong approach to things isn't what's going to help humanity. It's ultimately working alongside it. We see that at the end there with the pastor talking to him, keeping him from destroying, what was it, the UN, which would be very bad for so many reasons. So he
hashtag not my Superman.
Hashtag not my Superman. No, but he eventually realizes that this isn't what needs to be done. It's not even who he is. He was this embodiment of hope. I mean, that's what the whole S is in Man of Steel. I don't know if that's
accurate.
It's pretty common.
Accurate in here at this point in the story.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Anyway, he's the embodiment of hope to humanity, and him threatening to destroy humanity's leaders in the UN is not exactly a good look. And it's not going to get anywhere. It's kind of going back to The Last Jedi, like what Rose says, we're not going to win this by just fighting what we hate, but saving what we love. It's a very similar mindset that he comes to at the end there.
That's cool. Nate, I'll give you your choice: Batman or Wonder Woman.
I'll go with Batman.
Okay, I figured that would be the way it would go.
Coming.
Yeah.
Maybe Batman. Batman initially perceives Superman and what he's doing as another form of tyranny, which is a little strange because Batman's kind of put his own tyranny over Gotham.
Yeah, I mean, he's ruling Gotham with an iron hand.
Gotham with an iron fist. Yeah. But he does it in such a way that he lurks from the shadows and only comes out when there's absolutely needed for Batman to be there, because he physically can't be there anymore. He puts robots there, but
he wants like Gotham City to be completely superhero, metahuman free, completely free of Superman, completely free of any of the metahumans. He's brought peace to Gotham City with his control, and he wants it to stay that way. And so that's one of the reasons he doesn't want to have Superman to be a part of it.
But however, he evolves to understand that both extreme reliance on power and complete autonomy are flawed approaches, learning that kind of heroism sometimes involves finding a good middle ground and uniting for the common good. He really figures out that they were the Justice League, and without Batman, the Justice League kind of falls apart because we can all agree Batman's the leader of the Justice League. Really always has been. Superman.
I don't know. When I watched Super Friends as a kid, it was Superman.
Superman's the figurehead.
Not the Super Friends.
Boy. He's the poster boy, but Batman's
not
the leader.
too dissimilar to the Avengers. Captain America is the poster boy, but we all know Iron Man's pulling.
and Iron Man is very similar to Batman.
He's also the one funding it all too. So
yeah, that's true.
Right. So Batman really helped figure out that the Justice League is needed for this world. The world needs the Justice League, and when they all kind of separated, they all started to lose their ideas and kind of the concept on what a superhero was. They kind of just figured out that they have power and they'll use it in the way that they deem is right. Mm-hmm. And the same goes for Batman. Batman kind of did it in a lesser form and was still kind of having a moral high ground compared to everybody else, but he still fell from where he was.
It's still pretty messed. Like,
no, exactly.
It's still scary.
It's
everybody's
scary.
Basically held at gunpoint every day.
But Kingdom Come Batman has been adapted before into Crisis on Infinite Earths in the CW series.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And they did it wrong.
Oh, did they?
They really did. They made him a villain. They made him a full villain in that arc, and it kind of just fell off because like he wasn't a villain in this series, and it shows that he was just kind of fed up with crime and fed up with the amount of people dying, and so he just wanted to make sure that Gotham City, his city, was safe. And yeah, it was pretty interesting.
So I'm going to talk about Wonder Woman, but I can't talk Wonder Woman without us like bringing up why is it all of a sudden that Gal Gadot is not considered a great Wonder Woman?
Yeah,
actress?
Twitter and any social media now hates.
Like it happened like last week
overnight.
She did an interview where she was talking about James Gunn and her are working together to create a path for Wonder Woman 3 in the DC universe now, and then people were like, "Why are you bringing her back? Recast Wonder Woman. You can't have her." And I'm like, "Y'all loved her like 45 seconds ago, and now everybody
because we got rid of Henry Cavill, and everybody's like, why did you get rid of Henry Cavill but not keep? But like, you kept her, and just people just let it happen." Y'all did this with Robert Pattinson and Batman, and look how that turned out.
It worked out fine. All right, so Wonder Woman kind of starts out. She's really instrumental in bringing back Superman. She's the one that goes to whatever it's a hologram world or something. It was
the Fortress of Solitude.
Okay, the Fortress.
Just put a farm in it.
Okay, so she goes and she like confronts Kal-El. He won't let her call him Clark. Oh, that's what it was. He won't let her call her Clark because he's broken off with his humanity at this point, and she's the one that shows him what's going on.
He's farming. And he's not. That's
exactly
not the most human thing.
Exactly. But he's she brings him back, and as she kind of goes dark.
She does towards the end there.
She does.
I mean, she
also got a cool sword. Dark. Wasn't her sword like able to like part atoms or something like that? Like her sword was like super powerful. Cool. Anyway,
she gets pretty ugly. She's like encouraging like the complete destruction of
the gulag
and all the metahumans and like totally destroying them until she gets pulled back from the edge, from the abyss of by Batman again, and comes to realize that she can't. She can't go to that level of. And she had separated herself from humanity as well, which is another way of looking at it.
She had no people. She wasn't human. She wasn't Amazonian anymore either because she was kicked out of Amazon, Themyscira. She was kicked out of there because they said that she wasn't the ambassador for Themyscira as she was supposed to be. So she wasn't one with the humans, and she wasn't with Themyscira anymore. So she just had no people. So she just kind of let this anger build in her, which actually isn't uncommon in the comics. She gets angry a lot. She really does. She's powerful, and so she understands that, and so she really wants to show people her power, which is fair, and it can add some really great concepts. But it went a little far in Injustice at some point.
And Injustice, that series, it got real dark. Well, I think the thing that we learned from just kind of a quick overview, and we'll talk more about the characters, especially these three, but all of the characters next week in our next episode. But when we think about Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, we realize kind of that there has to be that balance. It's almost, you know, we're called Tatooine Sun, so you're going to find a lot more Star Wars references that pop into this with it. But it is that balance between the dark and the light, right? It's what we experience from Luke, what we hear from Luke in The Last Jedi.
You're about hear a lot of those references too.
Yeah,
it's our favorite.
It is, but it's not this battle between one has to overcome the other. It's about how do we find balance between them, the light and the dark, the day and the night, right? The life and death, and when you have it's not metahumans versus humans. It's not supers versus non-powered peoples like with Batman versus Superman. It's not the classic generation of superheroes versus this younger generation of metahumans. It's actually all of them figuring out how to work together, which is really the message that Wade and Alex Ross were trying to convey in this story with it. Let's talk a little bit more about that. One of the divides that's there, because it's a huge one in there. It's this idea of the generational issues. It's a key theme in the story where you have what I was just referencing a minute ago. The what are we calling them? The legacy heroes? Is that what we would call them? That the legacy heroes,
the OGs.
Yeah, that's right.
The original gangsters.
That's right. Versus this new generation of just out of control
whippersnappers.
Whippersnappers. How do you think the story kind of handles this battle, this conflict between them? What does the way that they resolve this suggest about, in the real world? Because again, if pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that generational divide is something that
is reflected.
Still exists. It's existed with every generation. As the next generation comes up, there's a divide between them. What do you think it's kind of teaches us about that?
Yeah, it vividly, really portrays the generational divide by putting the values of the traditional heroes against the reckless behavior of these new metahumans, especially at the Statue of Liberty, when these new metahumans are terrorizing these civilians, and the legacy heroes come and stop them, and they're like, "What are you doing? You are fighting each other
just because they're bored, basically.
Because you're bored, and you're endangering these people that you're supposedly protecting. This isn't what superheroes should be doing." And but they're like, "But we have these powers, these humans don't, and we just have nothing to do. There's no really supervillains anymore at this point." So it was really adding that conflict that escalates into, like I was saying, some physical fights and ultimately the battle at the Gulag at the end, and everything that happens with that, demonstrating kind of like how devastating this could be.
This conflict had been boiling under the surface for a while, and it came to a head.
If it's left unresolved, it could destroy the world. It genuinely could have.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something that's even more relatable to this current, I don't know, situation, world, whatever you want to call it. It's that the heart of this divide is kind of this lack of understanding from the older generation of heroes, these legacy heroes, and a lack of guidance for the new heroes, right? The legacy heroes kind of step back and let them take the lead without giving them any training in a way. The new generation, like you mentioned, Nate, kind of acts recklessly, just don't care what collateral damage there is to their actions. And the older generation kind of fails to understand and connect them. And you could totally see that nowadays. Like that, even I sometimes look at was it the Gen Alphas, which weird that there's already a generation that is younger
you
than
guys,
me.
right?
But I'll look at them and I'm already like, that's a little weird. Okay,
yeah,
sure. So there's always going to be this, because the older generation doesn't understand the newer generation. They don't want to interact with them in a lot of ways, and that just forces the newer generation to kind of exist in their own little echo chamber. So they tell each other what's okay and what's right, and it just reverberates and gets worse and worse. So they get to the point where fighting around the Statue of Liberty because they're bored, not caring who these humans are, is totally normal to them because nobody told them otherwise. And the older generation thinks that the new generation is weird, so they don't talk to them. And this will be applicable forever, because no matter what generations you look at, the old and the new generation always alienate each other and disagree. So that's part of why I think this is such a timeless story.
Right. Well, and then the beauty of it is the way that Wade and Ross resolve this and bring it together at the end, where there is this understanding of what the legacy superheroes in that generation, their understanding, their experience, their wisdom, and what they have been through. It then becomes more respected by the younger generation as they begin to work together. And then the older generation, the legacy group, looks at the younger generation as they have, they have to pass on this legacy, and they have to help them and guide them into being the superheroes of the next generation, which is a huge piece of what, we honestly, that's what this show has been in our relationship. I've had lots of people over the years on this show, or that know this show, specifically say it's fun to watch and to listen. When they've listened to multiple episodes, they pick up on this. It's fun to see how the show sort of starts, and it's pretty clear it's a dad and his two sons. Like our just kind of opening conversations, it falls into that very clear thing. And at the end, it kind of goes back to a dad and sons. But then in the middle, it's like we suddenly find this conversation move to we're all peers, and we all have an important perspective to bring to this. And that's and we've allowed that to happen when we talk about something as insignificant as comic book movies and Star Wars and those things. But it's allowed us to have conversations about the real world in that setting. And I think that's one of the...
We're talking about generational divides because we talk about a comic book.
Exactly. Right. And so it allows us to have those conversations. And I think that's really a powerful element in the story.
Yeah. I mean, kind of going back to what you were saying about how the two sides eventually learned how to, for lack of a better term, coexist. I think that's one thing that in current times people don't realize is both sides don't realize that it's a two-way street. You both have to be willing to meet halfway in the middle. Older people are like, well, the younger generation needs to come to us and ask us for help. While the newer generation feels like, well, why should we go to them? They should come to us if they don't like how we're behaving. And they should
start leading us.
Right. They should start leading us. They're the older generation. It's not this mindset of you have to both sides have to humble themselves to meet in the middle to come to a resolution and make any progress, which is something I think that's important to realize.
And we could stop this entire episode right there, because that's like, if that's all that anybody takes from this conversation, that's right there. But we got more to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about that, the ideas of in the narrative of power and responsibility.
With great power comes great responsibility.
It is, but that's
that's the problem. They didn't have an Uncle Ben.
They needed Uncle Ben with that. It's really what's the theme in this is not necessarily power, but it's the misuse of power and how it kind of destroys everything through that, either the complete not using it or the extreme overuse of it. How do you guys feel about the way that this narrative explores the consequences of unchecked power? And what kind of message does it ultimately convey about the responsibility that power brings?
Yeah, I mean, it initially depicts this unchecked power as through the actions of this younger generation who cause chaos and generation and destruction. And I remember when I first read this comic, it was I didn't know what I was getting into. I knew like next to nothing about this comic. I just know Nathan said, "Hey, it's a great comic. You should read it. It follows a pastor." I'm like, okay. It was such a whiplash moment when I'm sitting there reading it, and the pastor's walking through the streets like it's every day, and there's literal wars happening like 50 feet above his head, and he's completely unfazed. That's such a weird situation to just be dropped into in a comic. And it just shows you how this unchecked power has just become such a commonplace thing. It's such a problem that it's hardly even a problem anymore. While we know that this isn't the way things should be. So it really drives that home. And it shows that it gets to a point where it's no longer just normal everyday stuff with the whole Kansas event. The the nuclear explosion.
Right.
That kind of brings everybody out of it and realizes, okay, maybe there's something that's been going on that's not so cool. Maybe we should like address this for a minute.
Yeah, it was. That's crazy. Yeah, it was Captain Atom, by the way, that exploded.
Oh, it was like an accident, right?
It was Captain Atom. He's weird. Little backstory, comic backstory right here.
Okay, go for it.
Captain Atom was originally a military person who was experimented on and then turned into nuclear energy, complete like his physical form was a nuclear energy. So he had an outer shell made for him.
Now
so
he became Death Destroyer of Worlds,
basically, and he could use like nuclear energy, like shoot like blasts and stuff and fly and all that stuff. But if he had ever cracked, then he could fully explode and be a nuke. Like,
so was he battling Magog, or
he
like
was battling Magog? Yeah, because he was a legacy hero.
That's right.
At that point. So
that's right.
Magog wasn't a bad guy. He was a
hero.
He was an
anti-hero.
Right.
So yeah, it was, and then we're really seeing it later on with Superman and kind of the misuse of power, and even Wonder Woman to an extent. But when Superman returned and then created the Gulag, what?
Superman Returns,
Brandon Routh, Superman, yeah. But he created the Gulag, and it kind of it showed the other side of that coin, the other side of the concept of just the misuse of power in an attempt to impose order on these new metahumans. And then the devastating battle at the Gulag, it kind of instigated complete just authoritarian approach, and it emphasized the power used without consideration for individual freedom, that it can also kind of lead to disaster at this point. And it really showed that Superman was completely lost in how he was trying to get this. He knew he had to be this savior of the world. He just had no direction for it, and was trying his best to use the power that people said he had to use to be able to help humanity, because that's all he wanted to do at this point, was help humanity and help these heroes.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it is he had spent so long being humanity's savior, their hero, right, using his powers and abilities, that he forgot that part of what makes him such an effective hero is the fact that he is human. Quote unquote. He's of both worlds, and I think he forgot that he could use that other side that's in a lot of ways more powerful and more effective.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's the balancing of those two extremes in the resolution of the story.
With great power
comes great responsibility. Right, but it's a responsibility to use it within a proper construct.
Speak softly and carry a big stick.
Well, no, that's different, right? That speak softly and carry a big stick is sort of like you don't let them see you coming, right? You carry the big stick and don't let them know you're on your way. With that, sneak up on them, kind of you don't have to, you don't need to talk. This is more of the concept. It says in the Jesus says it in the Beatitudes when he says, the meek shall inherit the earth, type thing. This idea of meekness is seen as being weak, right? It's seen as being like somebody that can be stepped all over. I remember vividly, there's moments in your life as a dad when something clicks. Right.
Okay.
And I remember being on our house back in Colorado.
First one.
The flowering almond, the one that we lived in for most of your guys' childhood years, right? I remember being in the living room and on the floor and just going after it with you two.
Yeah, we were
right? Wrestling, and you guys are coming at me and all of this other stuff. And it just, I was playing and you guys were getting more and more aggressive, right? And I was jumping in there and I was having to be more, like more protective of myself. And I was getting a little bit more aggressive. And then I don't remember the exact what I did, but I remember there was something where I felt like, whoa, if that went just a little wrong, I could have hit Nathan's neck.
I wouldn't reach my 18th.
No, I'm serious. So we're just playing.
Right.
But the play went just a little bit south. And if I would have come at that from just a different angle, I could have killed you and it would have been no questions asked. And and it was later on that night, laying in bed, because really it got to me.
Yeah.
I'm laying in bed that night and I'm like, that's what meekness is. It's realizing I have the power of Superman here. I could do this. I could, if I got out of control, I could kill my child just playing a game. But I'm going to control it, and I'm going to do what's best in that moment. And we can still do this. We can still tussle, but I have to restrain my own self in order for it to be safe. And that's the idea of meekness that comes in at the end of this story. With it. Well, we open up every episode with this, right? So it's the pop culture is the mythology of this generation, and we're dealing with gods, right? That's what the DC universe is really built around, the idea that these superheroes are really like gods in that space. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do you guys see Kingdom Come fitting into this idea that pop culture is a mythology and that these stories are mythology? What are some of the parallels that you guys feel like you can draw between the conflicts in the story and then some of the, we've already talked a little bit about, especially the generational divide, but the issues that we see in our family, in our world today.
Right. Kingdom Come really fits into the idea of pop culture as this modern mythology by offering a narrative that explores universal themes and ideas and things that we struggle with, moral lessons and everything that we can relate to. Just like traditional myths and everything, it uses larger than life figures, these superheroes, to reflect on human nature and kind of the issues that we face in society.
That's one, just an interesting question. Why does mythology often use larger than life characters to get their points across? I wonder why that's such a common tactic, because it's been like that for thousands of years.
Because we're fascinated by strength. We're fascinated by power. We're fascinated by these heroes, right? And so we can step back and look at heroes and villains and the extremes that we see in those stories and look at this bigger narrative. I also think that there's and again, we don't apologize for this. We firmly embrace this. And if you listen to our show, you're going to hear this over and over again. But, we believe that there is a supernatural world, and that there is an eternal supernatural God, and there is the ultimate personification of evil, and that they are at war with each other. And so when we read these stories about good and evil and superheroes and supervillains and the dark side versus the light side in Star Wars and all of this, it allows us to connect with that part of us that knows that there's a bigger story that's out there with it.
Interesting. We touched on this a good bit, but I think one of, if not the main point of what makes this such a modern mythology is the parallel between the story and contemporary society.
Yeah, you really saw that and brought
as
it
that
up,
generational divide. Just in the real world, there's misunderstandings and conflicts that happen between the older and younger generations. You open up social media, it'll take you 2 minutes, if that, to see something like that. And the narrative's resolution, as we talked about, suggests that it takes a mutual understanding and respect and guidance from both sides to bridge this gap that, like I said, is equally relevant today, would have been equally relevant 50 years prior to the story coming out, will be equally relevant decades to come. There's always going to be this conflict between generations, and this story really does a great job of exploring that.
Yeah, and I think that's we can even see it, another big theme that as we've been talking, as I kind of was talking about the idea of meekness, right? We see that on an individual level, right? But then we need to think of this from a governmental level, and that's a big part of this story as well. With this, but you got Nathan, Sam, you were 6 months, not even like 4 or 5 months old when 9/11 happened. And Nathan, you were a little boy, you weren't born for several years, so you woke up into a world post 9/11, right? But I grew up in a world where, we didn't have these ideas of constant government surveillance and viewing everything that we do, and then we didn't when we went to the airport, right? anyone could get, if you can get through the metal detectors, which weren't that big a deal at the time, you didn't have to take your shoes off. You didn't have to scan all your stuff, right? You just went through, and anybody could go with you to walk to the gate, to see you off and stuff, or to pick you up from this. And everything changed post 9/11. And it's an example, right? That's all I'm trying to use with this, right? So we got so in fear of what could be because of what happened with 9/11 that we surrendered freedom for security. And this is a big theme, right? This is a balance that's in this story, and that we need to be willing to have real conversations about, how much is our security and our protection worth having someone provide that for us. How much of our freedom and our liberty do we have to surrender in order to have that security and that protection? So it's a really interesting story that's brought out in this with it. We can talk about a lot of different things in it, but there's one more that I want to just kind of touch on as the dad moment.
I am your father.
So one big lesson that we can take away from Kingdom Come is really the question of what does it mean to be a hero. It's not just about having power or being in control of things. Characters like we see in this Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and all of them, they show us that a real hero is willing to step back and have that dialogue and work with others and understand the different perspectives and the viewpoints before moving things forward. Treating basically with empathy, right? Having empathy for other people and other people's perspectives. So in our lives, we have to remember that being a hero, being somebody that's somebody else's hero, if that's what we end up being, means listening, means understanding, working together with the people that are around.
You could have just taken the monologue from the end of the Batman and had that be your dad moment.
The vengeance, not vengeance, but hope.
Yes.
The dialogue.
That's a good monologue.
They need hope.
It is. We do need hope. It's a good movie. Nathan wants to watch it. He'll probably watch that on his birthday now.
Such a good
Probably
movie.
watch it tonight, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised.
Stay up late and watch it.
It's so long. No.
It is too long for that.
It's too long.
Nate, what are we going to talk about on our next episode?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about kind of the Exile is the title. Kingdom Come is notable for its alternative interpretations of iconic characters. The Elseworlds label.
The Batman isn't going to be in the Elseworlds.
Batman's Elseworlds. Yeah. The label of Elseworlds. And this episode will kind of dive into the transformation and development of key characters such as Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman.
And some others.
And others.
Even Captain Marvel.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a big character in this.
I feel so bad. Savannah.
And Flash.
Stupid Savannah.
Who's Savannah?
Savannah?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
He's one that...
The bad guy.
Yeah, the bad guy.
In the first one.
Yeah. He created.
Oh,
he
yeah,
created these worms and everything that mind.
That's right. And
Shazam.
works with Luthor.
It's restricted Shazam from speaking.
It's Captain Marvel to you.
Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, that's cool. So I hope that you enjoyed the episode. I think it was a good conversation. I'm sitting here thinking about the conversation, and I'm like, man, that got deep really fast. So
that's what happens. With Kingdom Come.
Yeah, DC's Kingdom Come is that kind of a story. What are if people have thoughts on this? Where's some ways that people can share some thoughts about what we're doing?
Well, we're on Facebook.
We are,
and we're on Twitter.
We are.
Well,
it's
X, which is. Anyway, are we on Threads? I think we're
are.
on Threads.
I check it once every couple of days.
We're on Instagram, but I don't think we've done anything on it in a long time.
It's been a while.
But it's all at Tatooine Sons SONS. That's where you find us on everything. We even have a website, tatooinesons.com.
We do. You can jump on there and send us messages through that as well.
So that's where you can share your thoughts or get more on our show.
Yeah, and can people give us feedback on the show?
You can give us ratings and reviews on any app that allows you to give ratings and reviews. Some apps don't.
Well, lots of them give ratings option, but
right?
Not the reviews,
so you can rate us, you can review us. We might see it, we might not, but we appreciate it no matter what.
Weird.
Exactly.
I get notifications on most of them now.
But we would appreciate that. Let us know how we're doing. Hope we're doing well. But yeah, you can find us on any of that, and you can find the show on any podcast app that you want.
Any of them.
Cool.
And we would appreciate it if you would subscribe.
Yes.
Follow whichever that app lets you do. With that, and share the love, right? If you know other DC fans or other mythology fans or people that you're just like, man, that's the first time I've ever heard a dad and his sons, right? That's
Yes.
that's my
Dad and his sons.
Yeah, that's the proper way to use the English language there. So I'll use it that way. If you've never heard a dad and his sons talking about superheroes in comics in the way that we do, and you think others would like to hear that, then please share it with them.
Yeah.
Send them the link to this episode. Get the word out. We'd love for some DC fans and some comic book fans to find the show and be a part of the Tatooine Sons family. We'd appreciate that. So I think that's going to do it for this week. Nate, what's the plan for your birthday tomorrow?
I have no idea.
You do
Really, we
kind
do
of
not
know. What are we doing for dinner at
Texas
least?
Roadhouse.
Woo-woo.
One opened
There we
today
go.
as we're recording down in Foley. It's the closest one. So
We're gonna go. We're gonna get a good old steak.
I love Texas Roadhouse.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Awesome. I think that'll do it for this week. Anything else you guys want to say?
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joey, please.